This is Francis Thomas Redmond, Sr. I'm recording this in the New York Cardiac Center at 919 North Broadway, Yonkers, New York. The reason for that, Junior, was that the girl had handed me a bill marked Francis T. Redmond, Jr. Just an ordinary mistake, nothing to worry about. The reason I came up here, at least I consented to come up here, by talking it over with my wife, was the one simple reason: it was an old weakness that I had. It dated back till when I was a kid. I used to eat, and when I'd get sick, I wouldn't eat for a couple of days. And then I'd slowly start coming back again. Another reason was trouble with the bowels. That problem was solved too up here. They solved my weakness problem. And I'm writing this with the hope that it would help somebody else. I had trouble years ago with after my fifth child come along, and I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I owed over $1,800. I didn't know where my next loaf of bread was coming from, even. But the thing was, I collapsed in the news, and the people over there was very nice to me at that time. And I got home, I talked to the doctor. Now, this is a problem you might run into sometime, but you have to help yourself. I talked to the doctor, and I told him, I said, now, I had a case of nerves, I'm over them. Now, please, pay attention to me. Don't go out in the kitchen in a huddle with my wife. Well, the results was he went into a huddle with my wife out in the kitchen, and I wound up with a nerve tonic, which I think I shouldn't have even, if I had known, I wouldn't have even taken. But never mind about that. I practically slept for 108 hours straight through. First off, the wife gave me tea, toast, and soup, and she gave me the tea, toast, and soup, and I took the nerve tonic, and later on she told me she thought I was dead. She woke me up 26 hours later. The ambulance doctor refused to take me out of the plant that night because he says that man there's nothing wrong with him that a couple of good meals and a couple of good nights' rest wouldn't fix. I had to sign a release, which I did, which I try to explain to the doctor. Now, after waking up from the 26-hour stretch, my wife gave me tea, toast, and soup. I took the medicine again, and I went back for 20 more hours. This happened 4 times, which was 80 hours. And a 26-hour stretch made it up practically 106 hours. I then got smart to myself, and I got up, and I went up to the drugstore, and I found out just what was what. As a result of that, in about a week and a half, I went back and I reported back to work. I had some trouble with the boss then. The other boss that I told you about before was the assistant boss. And the boss didn't want to hire me. But I solved that problem, too, through a brother of mine. So problems can be solved. I'm reading here from an article in the Daily News of April the 18th, 1965. And it starts out by saying, nature is a healing power. Physician can only help. That article I just spoke to you about is by Dr. Theodore R. Vandell. These people that run this place, they're very considerate and kind and everything else that you could say about them. Now, a case in point, you have to go to the nurse for anything. I don't care what it is, I mean anything. You go to the nurse for everything. For an illustration, I stayed here 20 days before I'd ask for a cup of coffee. But P.S., I got it. I know in previous parts of this that I didn't even know how to explain things. See? And now my notes even is mixed up. But that is no problem neither. Now, in my future talking, I will try to say like before and after. What I mean by that, things that happened before that I went in or after I come out. Now, a case in point, this is for people that did not even have a heart attack. I heard of a fellow, and I know he was very excitable about baseball. Now, this man sat in front of a television set and allowed himself to get too excited over a baseball game, and he dropped dead. Another man, he got so excited, his wife used to give him a can of beer. He took up the can of beer and threw it at the television set, and it cost him about $35 to fix the set. The safety glass in front of the set got broken. But, as I said before, problems can be solved. His wife turned around and gave him beer then in a paper cup. So that's just one illustration. Now, this happened after I come home from the hospital. See? People will be inconsiderate, I mean drivers, on the road. See? A case in point, after I come home the second morning, I went to go down to get the paper. This driver, I was in the crosswalk, I was right, and the driver was wrong. But I just showed the driver that I was going to stand still and let him make up his mind. Another thing I want to talk about is a dog. In a previous heart attack I had, I used to walk around the block. Sometimes I would keep limping it all the time. And this here dog come dashing off the property at me. See? People, in my opinion, should chain their dog on the property or they'll get sued. Now, I solved that problem because I went over and I seen a mailman. They carry these things for dog repellent, and I am going to get one. It's previous to these heart attacks. If a dog come near me, I know how to take care of him. But now I just don't want a vicious dog. He might grab me, and I would go into another attack, which I don't want. After all, I had 5 of them now, and maybe I was destined to have 5. As I spoke to my wife, we had 7 children. And in a previous piece, I related that we were destined to have 5 children. And I guess I was just destined to have 5 heart attacks to get smart to myself, to really learn to live with it. And for now, this is my second day home. This is another part. I'm out on the porch now, and I don't want to disturb my wife. She's sleeping, and that was one of my troubles, I guess. Maybe I was too considerate of people. But I am quoting from a piece published in the Daily News of April the 22nd, 1965, page 4, on the 4-star final. Milltown pill tagged as perilous. Now, I had come home after my 5th attack, and I think I was doing pretty good in the hospital, and I wanted to get home. Another thing was that I was going into the 2nd attack, see, and I actually didn't know it, but I had some trouble with the chairman in the shop. I was getting these trifling dizzy spells from Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And this I'm talking about, was a Wednesday night. And I went to the chairman and I asked him to turn around and put a buoy on. He said he couldn't do it. But I know he done it on previous occasions. I even turned around and I said to him, I had worked 4 hours. I knew I was entitled to the night's pay, but I was willing to give the pay away to the boy, just as long as I got home. Now, here's how I had learned to live with it before. I told the chairman, you can go to hell. I don't mean that in a sense of the way that it might sound. I meant it this way. I told him to go to hell for one simple reason, and this is the reason. I went up, I said, I'm going up to the nurse, and the nurse will send me home, and I'll get paid for the night. Now, I went up to the nurse, and I explained to the nurse, and the nurse put the blood machine on me, the blood pressure machine, whatever you call it, and she had the stethoscope on me. And the phone rang. This is irritations that I'm talking about. It's only normal. The phone rang, and it was the chairman telling her to tell me that he was going to put a buoy on. The nurse says it wouldn't make a damn bit of difference anyway. I couldn't hear the conversation from his side, but I heard hers. It wouldn't make a damn bit of difference anyway. I wouldn't let the man go downstairs. So see, I learned to live with it even before my 5th attack. Now, right after this, I spoke to the nurse, and the nurse says, now, Mr. Redmond, she says, I'm only worried about one thing, is you getting home. And maybe that is one of my faults. I take too damn long, and I don't to explain things, and I don't go about it in the right way. Now, I said to the nurse, I said, I got my car downstairs. Oh, she says, good God, don't drive. Oh, I said, now wait a minute. I said, just a minute, I said. It was a natural thing for her to say that, because in the shape I was in, she must have seen on the blood machine the shape I was in. So, and I explained to her about the dizziness. Now, I said, just a minute. I said, I got my car downstairs, but I'll have another fella drive it home for me. I went downstairs and I got dressed and I went to this man and I explained to him. I said, Danny, his name was Danny Friedman, if that will help you in your story. I went to Danny and I said to Danny, Danny, I said, will you drive my car home? He said, yes. Fortunately, that night, he didn't have his own car with him. He said, I'll drop the keys in your mailbox, as I owned my own home at the time. I said, Danny, I says, please, what did I tell you? What did I ask you to do? This is being considerate of people. See? I turned around and I said to Danny, I said, do you live at my house? I says, Danny, I says, you drive the car home to your house, and then I know you will get up about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll have one of my sons drive you home. Then I went across the street, and some inconsiderate cab drivers don't want to take you places when you ask them to. But, as I say, problems can be solved, and I immediately solved that. And the man was very considerate. I asked him, would he go to Brooklyn? He said, why not? Like a perfect gentleman. Eh? I said to him, I says, no, I says, it will run, I says, in the neighborhood of $4. But I says, I'll give you $5 now. Eh? But I told him I'm a cardiac patient, and if he wanted, he could take the money now. In the event that I collapsed on the seat, I wanted him to take me to the Peck Memorial Hospital where they knew me. It was at Albany Avenue and Crown Street. Now, if I was all right, see, he would turn around and take me home. Oh, that man took me over to Brooklyn, and when I got over in Brooklyn, I said, no, you can go ahead to my home. I turned around and I went home. The following day, that's wrong, that part. That man waited for me to go up the stoop and put on the light and wave to him so long before he'd pull away. He was a perfect gentleman to me. Now, I went over to the doctor the following day, and the doctor turned around and he said to me, you're going in. So, that's why I'm writing this article. You have to learn to live with this yourself. You have to watch the medicine. If the medicine bothers you, don't take it. A case in point that I remember now, I wrote it down, but I can recall it now. Hey. But as I say, the nurses, you go to the nurse and they solve your problems. Well, anything as long as it helped me. That's why I say that you go to the nurse for everything, but you have to watch yourself too. As I stated, maybe I am talking too much about it. See? You have to be consistent and you have to watch yourself. People is willing to help. Where people bother you, you've got to walk away from it. A case in point, there was one of the women up in this place that stated to me, she says, oh, I'm a battler. Hey? Now, whether that woman, I do not know the woman's name, and it wouldn't matter anyway. It's only a case in point for this story. The woman said to me, I'm a battler. Maybe that was what put her there. She didn't, I don't know whether it was her first attack or her second attack, but if it was her second attack, maybe that was her trouble. Even before you have an attack, you have to watch it. After you have an attack, you have to watch it. maybe you might think this is funny when I say this. An old saying was with packet advertising, ask the man who owns one. But I take the attitude that I had 5, and I think a little bit about it. I can talk very intelligently about it. I try to help people, where people help me. But now I figure that I've really learned to live with it. P.S. I'm taping this out on the porch. I don't want to disturb my wife. I'm 2 rooms away from her. And the first morning I came home, I got up and I woke up at 5:30 in the morning. I went outside and I didn't want to disturb my wife, but I wanted to drive my car, and I left a note with she could understand the writing, but the spelling wasn't right. But she understood. I got my message over to her. That was one of my problems. I could not turn around and write her. I never wrote my wife a letter. I wouldn't even write my wife a card, on account of spelling. Now this here is for the mothers of the children. Some people's handwriting, in my opinion, is very terrible. That even occurs in doctors. Now, I would insist upon a child trying take your time and make the figures and the writing so anybody could understand it. Reading, writing, arithmetic, and history. I'm an old-timer, but it should have been knocked into my head about the spelling, which is very important, which was one of my troubles. Instead of being able to sit down and write a letter, or even write this story, I couldn't do the spelling. My wife always turned around and she did all of the writing for me. Now I make notes, and as long as I understand them, to put it on this tape, that's all is needed. This is started out as a hobby of mine, and now I love the tape recorder, if you might put it that way. And in this order. First, I love my wife. Second, I love my cup of coffee in the morning. Third, I like my paper in the morning. Oh, as I stated before, problems can be solved. And anybody that does not watch themselves, they're liable to go into a heart attack at any time. So I'm just saying, for God's sake, take care of yourself. And I mean anybody and everybody. I take the attitude, there's no need of having a heart attack if you watch yourself. As I stated before, it might be the waste of experience. Now, maybe I said this before, that about packet cars. Ask the man who owns one. And if I'm repeating on this tape, pardon me. Another case that I recall, this fella, that I worked with, he used to get very excitable about a baseball game. I think, in my opinion, it was the height of foolishness. Because if anything excites you too much, I don't care how much you love that thing, you got to avoid it. Because this man dropped dead in front of a television set watching a baseball game. See? Now, to go on to state about another man, this was a very excitable fellow about baseball, too. And his wife used to bring him in a couple of cans of beer. That was his enjoyment. To sit in front of a television set and watch the game and have a beer on the side, which I think he was entitled to. After all, the man worked all week long, and when a ball game come along, if that was his hobby, that was all right. But what I'm referring to, this man got so excited, he threw the beer can at the television set. And it cost him about $40 to get the set fixed. Now, I say that man is asking for a heart attack when you get that excited over some things. I'm just clearing up a point and making a point. As I previously stated, I was making a point. Now, what I meant by that was that if you turn around and let yourself get so excited about a thing, you're liable to bring on a heart attack. See? And you go and ask your doctor about watching a racehorse. You got a $10 bill on his nose or something like that, and you get too excited about it, you shouldn't go to the races. You're better off, I think, staying home. After all, I'm not patting myself on the back, but when you've been through the mill with 5 of these heart attacks, I think I can talk with a little authority. I know this tape is a little jumbled up, and I know it'll have to be straightened out by somebody that knows how, but I want to make a special note of this. About that fella that threw the beer can at the television set, and it cost him that money to get it fixed. His wife found a solution to that. She gave him his beer in a paper cup. So as I say, problems can be solved. As they say at the New York Cardiac Center, to provide a cardiac convalescent care to needy adults regardless of race, creed, religion, or anything like that. Never to fail the heart that fails. And I say, for God's sake, don't fail your own heart. And furthermore, think of the heart of your loved ones. Now, here is another case in point that I would try to emphasize before. You have to watch yourself. In sometime in November in '63, I come out of work and it was raining, and I had a flat. And I jacked the car up myself, and I changed the wheel, and I went home. And I thought no more about that until I went over to the doctor, and he said to me, he says, I think you ought to have a cardiogram. Oh, I said, okay, doctor, and I got up on the table, and he took the cardiogram. And he says, what the blazes have you been doing? Well, I said, Doc, I said, nothing that I could think of. But I said, as I stated before, this is how you watch yourself. I then had an accident with a fella, which was entirely his fault, and I had this in December of '63. Now, after the accident, I got home, and this fella seemed very concerned about my health and everything else. and he was going to do the right thing by me and everything else. But here it is, 1965, and he still owes me $125 on that accident. But never mind about that part of it. This happened in December, as I stated. Now, I went over to the doctor, and he went through the usual routine of putting the blood machine on me, and with the stethoscope, and looking in my eyes with the magnifying, that glass they use, with the light. So he said to me, he says, now, well, what can I do for you now? Oh, when I first walked into the office, I told him, I said, Doctor, I says, I must have confessed something I forgot to tell you before. I said, I told him about changing the wheel. Well, he says, that wheel business is strictly out for you. See? Now, I'm getting this story, I know, a little twisted up, but try and bear along with me. I'm trying to bring out the facts as they come to my mind. Well, as a result of that, he said to me, he says, well, what can I do for you now? Well, I said, Doctor, in view of the fact that it showed a strain on changing that wheel, maybe you better take another cardiogram. So I got up on the table, and as I got a funny expression about, I got wired for sound, see? Well, after he got done, I was going to go on my last 2 weeks. I'm taking the last 2 weeks in 63 of my vacation. He told me, he said, it's a good thing you're starting your vacation. He says, go home and go to bed for 10 days. See? Now, that's a case in point where you have to watch yourself. Another case in point, and maybe I overstepped myself, but the doctor was busy, and I told the girl, after I come home from the cardiac home, I said to the girl, I said, I want a cardiogram taken, because the previous day, a fella backed into me on Flatbush Avenue, which was not my fault either. But you run into those things, and I wanted a check made right away. Maybe the doctor thought I was crazy, but I didn't want to hold the man up and to explain it to him. Now I intend to go over there and explain it to the man on the next visit that I go over there. It's just another case in point. When I talked about that to you, I was referring to 1965 after the fifth attack I had.